All right, homeschool heroes, time to grab that coffee because we are diving right into week 17 of the math map. And, well, let's just say those intersecting shapes, they can be a bit much sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes I feel like I'm staring at the curriculum and I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to make this work? You know what I mean? Make it actually click for my kids.
I know exactly what you mean, but don't worry because this deep dive we're doing right now is all about making those hom moments into big aha moments, right? And to help us out, we've got this awesome material from Scholars and Socials.
Yeah.
And it's perfect for like a quick morning coffee chat like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Just sort of getting those ideas flowing. And one of the first things that really jumped out at me is this idea that we can actually see equations as shapes intersecting on a graph.
Right. Yeah. It's like taking this abstract idea and then making it visual.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. So each equation is like a set of directions. If you are using a map, right, and when you plot all of that on a graph, you're basically drawing those paths. You're drawing the paths that those directions make.
Okay.
And then where the paths cross, boom, that's your solution. You've got your answer.
It's like a visual treasure map.
It is.
Okay, but then they throw in like all these different types of lines, like consistent, inconsistent, dependent, independent. And I'm like, wait a minute. What's the difference between all of those?
Yeah.
And as a homeschool parent, why should I even care?
Okay, think of it like this. So you're trying to plan this big family outing, right?
Yes.
And sometimes everyone's schedule just aligns perfectly. And that's your consistent system.
Okay.
There's at least one time slot that works for everyone. But then there's those times when everyone's got their own thing going on. There's just absolutely no time that works for everyone. That's an inconsistent system. So there's no solution, no family outing.
Okay. So consistent means there's a solution.
Well,
Inconsistent, there's not a solution.
No.
Okay. What about dependent and independent?
So imagine this. You have two kids, right? And they're independent. They're their own people. They've got their own unique interests. They might have some things in common, a point of intersection, but then they each have their own separate path. But then you've got dependent lines. Think of them like twins. Same path, same interests. Everything is the same. So they represent the same line, just written in different ways.
Twins. So the material doesn't just stop at line. It goes on to say that curves, parabolas, and circles, they can intersect too. And it even says that the number of intersections, it depends on the shapes involved. So can you give us some real life examples? Like how does this play out in the real world?
Imagine you're at the park with your dog.
Right.
And you throw the ball. The path of the ball makes a parabola.
Okay.
And then there's this big tree in the park. Now the tree, that's a line.
Okay.
And here's the cool part. You can use math to figure out exactly where that ball's path, that parabola, is going to intersect with the tree, that line. That's the point where your dog has to jump up and catch it.
Then they get into this whole thing about shaded areas
Yeah.
created by intersecting shapes. And I'm thinking, why would we even need to figure that out?
Yeah.
What's the practical use of figuring out the area of a shaded region?
Think of it like you're planting your garden. And you want to make sure certain plants are going to get enough sunlight.
Right.
So you could use circles to figure out the areas where each plant's going to thrive based on the sunlight, the type of soil, all of that.
Yeah.
And then the shaded area where those circles overlap, that's your sweet spot. That's where both plants are going to do really well.
That's a good gardening tip.
It is.
I have to ask about these terms. Inscribed and circumscribed? What do those even mean?
All right. Okay. So picture this. You have a coaster, right?
Right.
And you put a cookie right on top of it. So it's perfectly inside, touching all the edges. The cookie is inscribed in that circle.
Okay.
It's snuggled right inside.
Okay.
But then let's say you take that same cookie and you put a plate on top of it and it completely covers the cookie. Now the plate is circumscribing the cookie.
So inscribed is cozy.
Yes.
Circumscribed is covered. Okay.
Yes.
Why does any of this even matter? Like why, beyond just getting through week 17, why should we even care about intersecting shapes?
Okay. So remember that garden example. Understanding how all these shapes intersect can really help you solve real problems. It's not just about your garden. It could be figuring out the best way to arrange furniture in your living room. It's not even just about math, right? It's about visual problem solving. It's a skill that they can use no matter what they end up doing.
Now I have to bring up this thing that they make this connection between intersecting shapes and these bigger ideas like unity, peace, reconciliation. And I was thinking, okay, that seems like a little bit of a stretch, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, yeah, it might seem kind of surprising at first, but think about it this way. When shapes intersect, they create this shared space, this point of connection.
Uh-huh.
And isn't that what we're always trying to do in relationships, communities, even globally?
Yeah.
It's about finding common ground, that overlap, where our differences can come together to form something new, something better.
It's not just shapes intersecting, it's ideas intersecting.
Exactly.
Perspectives.
And that kind of thinking can be really powerful for kids. It teaches them that even when things seem really different or they're clashing, there's always potential to find that common ground. So now we've talked about the ideas, the concepts, right? Now let's talk about how we actually teach all this stuff to our kids.
Yes. Let's get practical.
So this 4-day lesson plan from Scholars and Socials, it's seriously a game changer.
I was looking at it and I was like, this is so hands-on. It's amazing. Day 1, circles are everywhere. Like a circle hunt
It is.
around the house. I mean, who knew that math could be like a scavenger hunt?
It's just such a fun way to get kids excited about geometry, actually.
Yeah.
And they actually use string to measure the diameter, the circumference of all these circles. So they're really getting into it. They are not just reading about it.
And then it gets even cooler because they use those measurements to discover pi.
Yes.
It's this big light bulb moment.
It's like a code they're cracking.
Yes. Yeah, all through hands-on stuff. And then they even make, after they have that aha moment, they make their own perfect circles using string as a compass.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
They get to understand so much.
Yeah. And then day 2, triangle adventures. It's all about those triangles. First, they get to build all these different shapes with popsicle sticks, and they see like why triangles are so strong. And then they get to go on this right angle hunt around the house using the corner of a piece of paper, and then back to the popsicle sticks to build different types of triangles. Acute, obtuse.
It's just amazing how much they can learn just from playing with those popsicle sticks.
And then day 3, that's when things start to get a little
more challenging.
Yeah, because that's when they introduce trigonometry. I know when I hear that word, I'm like, ooh, trigonometry. But Scholars and Socials, they break it down.
They do.
In a way that's totally accessible. Like for parents who haven't done this stuff in a while.
They do.
Yeah.
And they actually use these really fun memory tricks. Like, you remember SOHCATOA?
Yes, I remember that.
I always thought that sounded like a foreign language.
Yeah.
But they make it make sense.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's like, now you've got a mystery to solve and you have the tools.
Yeah, it's like a real life mystery. Okay. And then day 4 is the unit circle.
Yes.
Which, can we just be honest? It can be a little bit intimidating.
It can.
Yeah.
But the way they present it, it's so approachable.
They make it so approachable.
And I love that because I remember learning that and I was just like, I don't know what's going on.
Right. It can be kind of like a spiral.
It can.
Yeah, yeah.
But they actually have kids create a human-sized unit circle on the floor. They get to walk around it and they're marking angles and coordinates.
I can picture my kids doing that right now in the living room. And then they end it all with a game of triangle and circle Jeopardy, which is so fun.
It's such a fun way to review, to make sure they're really getting it.
So Scholars and Socials really just goes above and beyond. They give you everything you need to make this fun.
They understand homeschooling, the good parts and the hard part. It's not just the activities. They give you the explanations, even assessment tools.
It's like having a homeschool partner. So we've explored why intersecting shapes are important. We've got a coffee. We've got the curriculum all ready to go. We've seen how we can bring them to life. But now let's get into some of the nitty-gritty.
It's like when your kid looks up from their math book and they're like, but what does intersection actually even mean? What is that?
And thankfully, Scholars and Socials gives us a nice, clear, simple answer.
Yeah, they do.
They say that an intersection is basically just where 2 or more things meet.
Right.
Whether it's lines, curves, shapes, whatever. It's like that overlap.
That shared space.
Yes. It doesn't just have to be lines and circles. It can be all sorts of geometric figures.
That kind of leads into another question that comes up a lot. What's the difference between a consistent and an inconsistent system of equations?
Right, because that can be a little confusing.
But, it all comes down to solutions or the lack of solutions.
Okay, so consistent means it has at least one solution. Like we were talking about, finding that time for the family outing when everybody's free. Then an inconsistent system has no solution.
No solution.
Like trying to fit those square blocks into the round holes.
It's not going to work. Nope. They have this great analogy to explain independent and dependent systems too.
Oh.
Imagine independent equations. So each person, right, with their own unique path. But then dependent equations, they're like 2 expressions of the same idea. So they represent the same line.
So independent means they're like distinct.
Yeah.
So Dependent means they're intertwined.
Intertwined, yes.
Got it. So I think sometimes when we're going through this, we're so focused on getting through the curriculum that we forget to connect it back to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So how can we show our kids that this isn't just about lines on a graph? Intersecting shapes are more than that.
Well, think about art. When an artist uses overlapping shapes and colors, those intersections, they create something new. New hues, new forms, even new emotions. It's all about how these different elements come together to create something beautiful and something meaningful.
So it's like math and art are secretly working together to help us understand the world.
They are.
Before we wrap up, I have one last question, and I think this is something a lot of homeschool parents are probably thinking about. How can we make this concept of intersection relevant to our kids' everyday lives?
Mm-hmm.
How do we take it beyond the textbook, beyond the lesson, and bring it into the real world?
That is where the real magic happens, right? It's about opening their eyes to see all these intersections that are already all around them. Next time you're baking a cake together, you're mixing the ingredients.
Yeah.
Talk about how those ingredients intersect to create something delicious. Once they start to see those connections, it really opens up this whole new way of thinking, this new way of understanding.
Everything is connected.
Absolutely.
That is a beautiful way to wrap up this deep dive. And we hope you've enjoyed this little coffee chat that we've had. And we hope that you feel ready to tackle week 17 of the Math Map.
With confidence.
Yes, with confidence and maybe even a little bit of excitement. Happy homeschooling, everyone.